tonight for this, I suppose, is the first format between the candidates for District 20 seat that Bobby Lawson is vacating. And we're awfully glad to have all of you here, and we're also glad to have all of the candidates here with us. This forum is being co-sponsored by the Lake Lanier Association and by the Hall County Taxpayers Association. I'll give you a brief description of both of them. Lake Lanier Association is essentially a group who focuses on water quality and water quantity issues on Lake Lanier. We deal with a lot of other issues like safety and those types of things, but basically we're involved in protecting Lake Lanier. Hall County Taxpayers Association is a group that was founded a few years ago. If you'll remember, when everybody's taxes went up, that's when they decided to organize, and they have acted somewhat as a watchdog group, and they keep an eye on tax issues. They go over the budget, they sit in on budget hearings and make suggestions to local government about ways to save money, etc. So this is a combined forum, and if any of you out there have other groups that have other interests and want to set up a forum, I think it's a real good idea to find out where the candidates stand on some of these issues. I'll explain the format very briefly. We drew straws when everybody came in. Jay Taylor will start with the questions, and then we'll just rotate the questions from there on. We're going to give each candidate 2 to 3 minutes to make an opening statement. Then thereafter we'll ask prepared questions from both the groups, and there will be a minute and a half for those responses, and then we'll open it up to questions from the audience, anybody in the audience who wants to ask questions, or the media. And at the close of that session, then the candidates will each have a 2 to 3 minute closing statement, and then we'll wander out. I'm not sure about this time thing on the 1.5 minutes, whether or not that is too much. We started out thinking a minute, and then the questions seemed really complex, and I thought, well, why don't we start out with 1.5 minutes and see how it goes. If we don't need it, we can cut back or whatever. Okay. We'll start with the first question, which will be for Jay Taylor. Opening statement. Joe makes that statement. I did this last time too. And I wanted to tell you, the timekeeper will let you know when the time is almost up. There are 2 cards. One says 15 seconds. The other one says time's up. My husband always says you need a 3rd card that says shut up. We didn't do that tonight. So we'll start it out with the opening statement from Jay Taylor.
My card needs to say don't be so long-winded, so if I tend to bleed over 5 seconds, forgive me on that. Be careful what you ask for, because you just might get it. Now, what are people asking for now? They're asking for politicians who will tell the truth as they see it, who will stand firm on principles and not try to be like the windsock out at the airport that blows whichever way the wind is blowing. Be careful what you ask for, you might get it, because somebody who's going to stand firm on their principles and tell you as they see it is not going to have too much regard to try to tell you what they think you want to hear. If you're not willing to support a politician who from time to time is willing to tell you some things that you might not want to hear, then you probably want to continue to be lied to and will end up with the government you deserve. I think we deserve better. Now, there's a lot of argument going on about what unifies the country. What can take Christians and atheists and Muslims and people from China and Germany with different outlooks all together? It's one thing. What unifies the country is the desire for personal and economic freedom. There is no unity beyond this. Now the problem is the nation stands at a crossroads right now. We can continue on the low road of more government and more control, which leads to bankruptcy, leads to poverty, leads to totalitarianism. Or we could take the high road, which of less government and less control, which leads back to the constitutional intent of the United States. Not only greater prosperity and freedom, but back to the original intent. I am the only candidate who sits here before you tonight, possibly in the entire state of Georgia, who can not only see this, but is willing to live it, to be it, and to fight it for it at every moment. I advocate greater freedom in your personal and your economic life. Now, one side of the political spectrum says, we trust you in your business dealings. When you're doing business, government should stay out, but in your social and in your personal life, you need some control there. The other side of the political spectrum is the complete opposite of the coin. They say, we trust you in your personal and your social life, but we do not trust you when you're doing business and in your finances. These are both half-hearted, weak positions that do not have the courage to take this country back to the Constitution. Now, I know you're probably saying, what are you, running for Congress or running for president? I mean, these are some pretty big things. But I'm here to tell you that the qualities that make Hall County a great place to live are the same qualities that make the United States a great place to live. And it does no good to have a thriving county on board a sinking ship. The ship goes down, we go down with it. And if we get our house in order, we can be a shining beacon and a struck bell to the rest of the country, which will ring far beyond these boundaries. Now, last but not least, in my opening statement, to go to the government to solve personal and economic issues is like going to the Wizard of Oz. It's an illusion. You're awed by the smoke and the fire, but it's just a bad illusion run by people who are taking and robbing money from us to pay for this bad illusion. And it's time for us to depose the bad wizard and reclaim our right to might as prosperous and free people in this country. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey. Chandelle?
Thank you, Lillian. My name is Chandelle Summer, and I'm an attorney in Gainesville. I've been practicing law for 10 years. In the law, we have an expression, time is of the essence. And specifically with regard to the environment, time is of the essence. We are in a situation now where in the next 60 years, our environment could go drastically downhill. We are living on a planet with 5.5 billion people who are increasing exponentially. Scientists predict that in the next 60 years, that population will double to 10.4 billion people. We simply do not have the resources or the capacity to carry that many people and in our present environmental condition. There are also problems with deforestation, CO2 production, and global warming, which are going to seriously affect this country and this world. I'm very concerned about the environment. I think the most important issue I've learned about in this entire campaign has been the environment, and I intend to fight and stand for the environment. Thank you.
Mr. Rogers?
I'm Carl Rogers, in the insurance business here in Gainesville and have been for nearly 20 years. A fourth generation in Hall County, very concerned of Hall County and the issues. Of course, the environment is everybody's concern. I think everybody that sits up here has those concerns as well. My grandfather was originally from Hall County, as his father was. My father, his parents, my mother, her parents. And I've seen Gainesville Hall County change tenfold in the last 20 years, 25 years. And my concern today, after raising 2 children, educating 2 children in the school systems here, sending them to universities here in Georgia and out of state, is I want to better Gainesville Hall County and Northeast Georgia for their children, for everybody's children. And I think with the expertise that I have in being involved with community issues and in civic organizations, I have seen different people come and go, and I've seen changes, positive changes. Of course, we've seen negative changes too, but I feel like one of the things that I can do for us in Gainesville Hall County is be effective in government. I am a small businessman and have been a small businessman. I have never been a bureaucrat. I plan never to be a bureaucrat. So to sum it up, I want to represent you, the citizens, the voters of Hall County, and I feel like on November the 8th, when I'm elected, I can represent Gainesville Hall County to its best. Thank you.
My name is Dick Meekum, and I want to take this opportunity to thank the Lake Lanier Association and the Hall County Taxpayers Association for having this forum. I've been in Hall County for several years and was the sheriff of Hall County for 12 years and up until about a year and a half ago. I decided that after a period of time as sheriff that it was time to begin doing something about the state and some of the problems that I witnessed and found in the state that are being dumped back on the county and on the county taxpayer. My experiences or my education deals with a bachelor's degree with the University of Georgia in business and also a master's degree at Brenau College in public administration and also Teach College. It gives me an insight into what's going to take to change some of the things that need to be changed in the state. There are a number of things that we're going to have to deal with, certainly crime, education, poverty, taxes. The gamut, I find, is wide. You have an opportunity to work within government and think you know it all, and suddenly you get involved in something like this, and you find that the study has not even begun. But I do feel that Georgia is a great state in which to live. We've had a great many things positive in this state, but there are many things that we need to change. And we need to change, and we're beginning to see that change coming. We're beginning to see a change from a non-responsive government that we have today, and that is basically what my vision is for this campaign. And that being one that we return democracy to Georgia. Democracy, or a democratic type of form of government, is of the people, for the people, and by the people. And you will find that as we begin to look at Georgia, that people have been ruled out, that people no longer have a control, and people are no longer being taken care of or looked at by the state. And that is our vision, to return the people to the government. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Before we get into the prepared questions, I'd like to say that some of these questions may be complex. I know the president of our association has been working very committedly toward representing us in the water wars, for example. But even he sometimes gets overwhelmed with the paperwork in him because they are very complex questions. We're not trying to ask any trick questions, so if anything needs to be amplified on or set up better, just let us know, and we'll amplify on the question as well. Why don't we start out with 2 minutes on these questions and see how that works? And if everybody feels comfortable with it, we'll stick with that. I'm getting concerned about the time limit. Some of these questions are complex. And if that's not long enough, we'll go longer. We'll just try out the 2 minutes and see how that goes. Okay, we're going to start with Chandelle Summer on this question. Might as well just dive right in there. As you know, there has been well-publicized controversy between Hall County and the city of Gainesville over water rates in the county. How would your position on this issue differ from or be similar to that of your predecessor should you be elected? Do you think you'll be able to reach a consensus position with the rest of the local delegation?
Well, what you're referring to, of course, is the battle over water rates between the city of Gainesville and the county. And the bottom line is that the Georgia Constitution allows the municipality to set the water rates, and that would be the city of Gainesville. There's been an increase in the rates that are charged to the county versus the rates that are charged to the city residents. And the county residents, of course, are up in arms about it, and the 2 legislators from the county introduced a bill which would require the city not to charge a discriminatory rate to the county customers. The present representative, Bobby Lawson, did not support that bill because he felt as though it was unconstitutional, and he was right. It is unconstitutional, and if anyone had challenged it, it would have been struck down as being unconstitutional. I think the solution to the problem is consolidation of the Hall County and city government so that it all comes under one umbrella.
Well, my personal feeling, and I've said this before, that I would rather leave more government out of it, leave the state out of it. I think it's something that can be addressed locally, the city and the county. I think one of the problems we have is we have not been to the table enough and discussed it enough with key people from the city and the county with our commissioners. And I would rather resolve it locally.
I think it can be resolved locally. Right now there's a lot of animosity between the city and the county. However, in talking to individuals within both groups, I find that they are ready to sit down. And you do have individuals within both groups that do want to sit down and I think they're ready to talk. It's a matter right now of just getting them together and doing that, and I believe that we can resolve the problem.
Mr. Tax?
I think consolidation is a very logical and reasonable thing to consider right now. But however, there is a far more bold proposal to go with out there, and that is to talk about getting government out of the utilities business, complete privatization. Now, I know Gainesville's had history in the past of privatizing the fire department, and it didn't seem to work out. That's because they approached it as a black and white issue. If you're a government entity, you live up to these standards. If you're private, you don't. So how do you control this? The answer here is not to approach it as black and white. You can introduce competition, which is based on supply and demand. What do you demand? Reasonable quality at reasonable prices. With competition, you'll be able to get that. If these industries have to live up to obvious standards, and if we say that they don't, you can't get into this business, it's something to consider. Privatization, getting government out of the utilities business.
Okay. The next question will start with Carl Rogers. Do you support and would you introduce legislation to allow the use of a special purpose 1% sales tax for school projects?
Yeah, that is a very good question that we hear lots of, is to give the taxpayers, if it will give some proper relief, the 1% sales tax I would support.
I think the 1 cent sales tax is probably the fairest way to go. I guess my question would be whether or not it'll cover the full amount of the budget that we have now. The main thing I do not want to see is to have lottery funds pulled out and you begin shifting funds between the two. And Florida ran into that mistake, and they said, well, the school system is getting so much for funds for their school in the budget, so in the lottery, so we'll just supplement their budget, and it wound up the state getting more money in their own pocket. So I don't want to see that happen, but I do think that certainly the sales tax is the best way to go.
I oppose a tax on income altogether. I believe that if we brought home most of the money that we earn every week, we would be able to afford these sales taxes if government was limited to just what it is necessary for it to do. I think sales taxes are one of the best ways to pay for things. I think the 1% sales tax should definitely go to the schools because that is one of the things that is the most important for government to be involved in, at least in terms of standards of quality. So I'm all for the 1% sales tax going toward schools.
I believe that in order to increase the productivity of our public school system, we've got to fund it adequately. Right now, the educational system is being funded by ad valorem taxes, and the equity in funding it with sales taxes comes from the fact that everybody pays sales taxes. Everybody who shops pays sales taxes, whereas only property owners generally pay ad valorem taxes. So I believe that funding the school system with sales taxes is in and of itself a good idea, just because it hits everybody across the board equally. Now, the 1% special option sales tax that has been proposed is for a limited period of time and can go towards special projects at any time. There's been a prohibition of using those funds on educational purposes, and I think that prohibition should also be lifted and allow the funds to be used for school projects in addition to the lottery funds and the budget that's in place already.
The next question will start with Nathan. How do you feel about heavy industry in Hall County, particularly in light of the present controversy surrounding the Chicopee project to bring a print company into Hall County that is being offered tax incentives and is purported to be to emit 2 million pounds of VOCs annually, VOCs being volatile organic compounds which contribute to lowering your air quality standards?
I think everybody would like to see industry, and we know industry is going to come into Hall County. People, I think, oftentimes take an anti-growth stance, and it's dangerous in doing that. But I think that if we go with a quality growth and a type of growth that is not going to pollute air or pollute our streams or our water, counties around us have different types of laws that they have in place through the county commission that restrict certain types of industry coming in. Any industry that comes in, I feel that people need to look at, and I'm saying people, someone over and above just the commission, that can report back to the commission as to what a particular industry is going to bring into our community. What this particular group here that we're talking about at Chicopee, I don't think we really know enough about it yet to make a decision as to whether or not we can bring this particular industry into the community. But rather than having a knee-jerk reaction, just saying we need to keep it out, we do need to take a close look at it, make a determination, is this industry right for our county? Is it something not only right now, but for the future? Is it going to pollute streams, air? If it is, then it doesn't need to be here.
It comes down to the old mistake of black and white once again. If you're for industry, you're for pollution. If you're against it, you're for the environment. It's never that simple. I think we all want industry to come into Hall County. This county is booming, it's growing, we want it to continue, but we need to let all these people know when they're coming in, we value your business and your industry, but we also value the cleanliness of our environment. And we're going to make sure that you bow to these standards and upkeep them, but otherwise, welcome.
I believe that we need to revolutionize the way we do business in America and in the world, as a matter of fact. I believe that we need to have businesses internalize the environmental costs of doing business. They need to begin to price products according to the impact that they're going to have on the environment, and have businesses pay taxes for the degradation that they do to the environment. I believe if we have a system where we have a phase-in of taxes and give businesses an opportunity to invent new ways of doing business so that they don't pollute the environment and innovate and become more labor-intensive and try to undo some of the negative effects that have been done to the environment over the past 100 years of the Industrial Revolution, we can move towards a restorative environment rather than the environment that we have today, which is going downhill at a very rapid pace.
Well, being involved with business and probably servicing as many as 2,000 accounts at one time, being in the insurance business, of course, you know, growth is important to everyone's livelihood, and that's what makes the world go round. Fortunately, in Gainesville Hall County, we're fortunate where we can pick and choose who we want to come to Gainesville Hall County. Over the years, I think one of the problems we've had is we have not worked consistently with each other. The Chamber of Commerce working with the City of Gainesville, the City of Gainesville working with Hall County, the government entities working with the Lake Watch people, with the Quality Growth people. I think there's a way to make the system work where we can pick and choose what industries we do want. If they are pollutants, yes, we can say no, or yes, we can say yes. My concern also is what's already here. I hear more concern about new growth than I do the old growth that's already here. Being involved with the environment, being a former scout leader, I was doing things before Hall County, Lake Watch was even thought of. So, I think everybody's concerned with the environment, and certainly I am too. And fortunately, we live in Gainesville Hall County, where we have the lake and we have the mountains and we have Atlanta, Georgia. So that's my answer.
Next question will start with Mr. Taylor. The Gwinnett Master Plan proposes to take millions of gallons more of water from Lake Lanier and, after use and treatment, pump the effluent upstream for miles and back into Lake Lanier. This proposal is a major reversal of the 10-year policy by the state EPD to allow no more direct discharges into the lake. What is your position on the proposal, and what steps would you take to support your position?
I don't know of anybody who wants to see that water dumped into Lake Lanier. I don't, and I don't know anybody who does. It's our lake. Gwinnett County needs to handle their problem on their own. When they came up with that plan, they had several alternatives. And those alternatives are fine, but I think they put them there just as a cover. They really wanted to dump it in here all the time. And we've got to stop them from doing that, and we've got to do it now, because if they're allowed to, it's not going to be the end of it. It's going to keep going on and on. And one thing I've noticed is what's brought me up here to Hall County is largely the lake. I know people who live in Gwinnett County, down in Henry County, and in Fulton County, who come up here on weekends to use that lake. They consider it theirs, too. If they are sufficiently outraged about this, which is the ones I've talked to are, we can bring pressure from all sides against this. It's not just Hall County battling Gwinnett County. We've got to make the fact known that Lake Lanier is an economic issue for all of North Georgia, is bringing a lot of money in here. It has a lot of interest, and a lot of people around the state, they owe it to themselves to get involved in this. I'd like to see a large consensus be brought together on this and to fight Gwinnett County from doing this any way possible.
Well, I think this is probably the no-brainer question that you threw in there for everybody to answer. Obviously, I don't support the discharge of treated wastewater into Lake Lanier, especially when it's 3 times the amount of wastewater that's being discharged from all of the discharges added up together that are currently being put into Lake Lanier. I believe that there's all sorts of problems with putting any type of treated sewage into a lake. There are overflows that happen occasionally, and I understand that the Gwinnett, the EPD has indicated that they want to use Lake Lanier as a buffer to then have Lake Lanier's natural forces stabilize the water for drinking purposes. And I just don't believe that we need that right now, and I agree that Gwinnett needs to take care of its problems without plundering into the counties that surround them to take care of its own infrastructure.
The problem with Gwinnett, I'm not really concerned with. I'm more concerned with Gainesville Hall County, and I think we have the problem here that we've got to address first before we can address Gwinnett. Gwinnett does have a problem, and yes or no, I do not want them to come into Hall County and put their treated sewage in Lake Lanier. But I'm not a chemist. I don't know all the ins and outs. I am a business person, a small business person, and I have to put my faith in chemists that know what they're doing. For years here in Gainesville Hall County, we have been doing the thing that Gwinnett wants to do to the lake and the Chattahoochee River. And of course, I know the city on the sewage end of it has spent millions and millions and millions of dollars addressing that problem, and I think overall they've done a real good job. I know at times, there have been problems, but I also know one of the major problems we've had is rainwater storm runoff. It's probably one of the biggest problems we have in Lake Lanier today. Not because what's happening now, but what happened 25 or 30 years ago. And being a native of this area, I remember when all the new growth came about and when the silt filled Lake Lanier. We seem to have that under control right now. But to end my statement, I would not be in favor of Gwinnett bringing their treated sewage through Hall County to Lake Lanier.
When you start getting into the water issue, it becomes a very complex situation. As far as what to do with Gwinnett County's water, on June 21st of this year, Gwinnett took in about 94 million gallons in one day, just on the 21st. They have to do something with that water down there to get it out. I think they could take out a total of about 125 million gallons a day. And they're going to have to do something with that water. The question is whether or not you put it back into Lake Lanier. I think there's also a possibility that they're going to dump it down below the lake. And that's a possibility. I don't know if you had a chance to see the article that was in Sunday's Journal-Constitution. It talked about the Chattahoochee River. Any water, I think, that Gwinnett County put in below the dam would certainly be cleaner than the water that Atlanta is putting out down below it. And the reason I say that is one of the things that I found in studying this particular issue is that we are releasing water periodically out of Lake Lanier in order to cleanse the water that Atlanta dirties up. Does that make sense? In other words, so that the water going into Florida is cleaner and doesn't kill the life in the river and in the ocean below it. So we're using water here to cleanse what Atlanta dirties up. Now, if Gwinnett were to pump that water down below the dam, possibly we wouldn't have to run the generators as often, and we could give them cleaner water than what they've got in the river now. The problem that we're facing, I only got 15 seconds. The problem that we're facing is you can't answer these questions in 2 minutes. These are very in-depth questions, and my time's up. But I'll be glad to discuss more with you later.
I feel like somebody's going to ask a follow-up on that one, so we might have 2 minutes more to go into our next question. We're going to start with Chandelle Summer. Commissions and authorities are appointed boards with broad powers. The Chicopee Park Commission has gotten millions of tax dollars from local taxes without returning any funds to taxpayers from their profits. How do you feel about the autonomy of non-elected boards or commissions as related to the use of tax dollars?
Well, I think that when you talk about taxes and boards that control taxpayer funds, that there has to be some type of public accountability. You can't have any type of board with absolute power over money and expect them to act in the public's best interest unless it's a group of people who are specifically elected by the public and have some type of accountability.
Well, I think most of the people on the board, and I don't remember who all they are real good business people and are very accountable. So I personally don't have a problem with it, but not knowing all the ins and outs of the question, it's hard to give a straight answer. But I feel like the board members there are probably very good small businessmen and know the value of the dollar.
The commissioners or city council generally form these boards to assist them as far as looking at issues in a greater depth than what they have time to do. These boards are valuable to the commissioners, and it does give them greater insight, and I think that they are important. And while we do not elect them, the buck is always going to stop with the elected official, no matter. So it is always going to go back to them, whether they have a board there or not.
The board may serve some value, but the most important thing to remember here is whose tax money is this? What is this? This is our money that is taken. Some would say confiscated, but it's taken. All right? We have the power with our money. That's how you control the growth of government, because you are feeding it. These boards may be very valuable, but it is our money. And if you are against this, you can do something about it.
Question, we'll start with Carl Rogers. So we're doing all right on time, it looks like. We'll do 1 or 2 more questions and then open it up to the audience. Okay. The outcome of the water wars lawsuit between the states of Georgia, Alabama, and Florida could have a dramatic impact on Lake Lanier. Studies are due to be completed on this issue in March of '95. Many activists in the Lake Lanier area feel that our interests here are taking a back seat to those of downstream interests such as power generation, barge traffic, and growth in Atlanta. What would you do as a legislator to help protect both the economic and environmental interests of our region?
Well, first of all, I think we're feeling the effects already just from the news media and being able to deal with the state and the feds as far as being able to withdraw water that we need to take care of what growth we have. I would be very much involved as far as when I'm elected on November the 8th to address that issue and deal with the controversy that we have. And I feel like with the business experience I've had, the small business experience, you have to bring these things to the table and you have to get them resolved.
I think the main thing in the water wars as far as the downstate or downriver states and uses is we've got to have representation on this board. it's a kind of a skip or miss situation right now, but we've got to have a representation all the time representing the economic impact of Lake Lanier. When I've asked people for some sort of study regarding the economic impact, and it's enormous, but they really don't have an actual amount as far as what kind of costs we're looking at as far as this lake is concerned. It's a tremendously valuable resource to us. We're going to have to do everything we can to protect it. But the other part of that is we're going to have to find another water source. We're going to have to find some other way to get water to ourselves and to a growing North Georgia rather than Lake Lanier. Lake Lanier makes up 65% of the total water needs of Georgia, yet it's only fueled by 5%. The regeneration of Lake Lanier, when it goes down, is extremely small, and it takes a long time for it to come back. I heard a little bit ago that the silt is under control. I'm here to tell you, folks, the silt is not under control. I have dove in that lake many, many times. I live on that lake. And when that lake is down like it was this past winter, and then all of a sudden the rains come and it starts to fill up, I'm here to tell you, folks, there's silt because it was red. It looked like I go out there and walk on it. We're going to have to do everything we can to protect this lake, and the less we take out of it, the better off we are. We've got to find another water resource, and that is none other than the Oconee watershed, and we've got to move in that direction, and as quickly as we can, the better.
Well, by now, it's quite hard to add to all that because the best thing to be learned is how valuable Lake Lanier is. Like I've said before, it's what brought me here, and it's a powerful economic magnet to North Georgia. Now, in terms of us having to find another water resource, the first thing that strikes me is with having that lake out there, it's a bit ridiculous for us to have to go around and find another one now. If Lake Lanier is doing such a great job, let some of these other counties learn from it. Maybe dam off some of their own rivers and form their own reservoirs. Right now, I really can't add any more to that except the fact that it's our lake. I agree with everyone here. We must take care of it as much as we can. And it's going to be here for a long time. And I don't want to see the rest of the state jumping on and saying, you have such a great thing here, let us have a piece of it. They can learn something from self-reliance. Hall County did it. Let them go out there and innovate for themselves.
Many of you all may not be aware of the fact that this lawsuit originated when Tom Murphy, Speaker of the House, decided to put a dam up on the river that runs through his district. He decided that he would build a dam to take care of the needs of people within his community and the outerlying area. Alabama initiated a lawsuit saying that they were going to be ripped off in effect from water, and Florida also joined in the lawsuit because they were concerned about how the lack of water going down the Chattahoochee would affect their particular state as well. It's now with a study committee, I understand, and I believe there's a representative from the Lake Lanier Association on that study committee, which is exactly what we need, because we need to have Lake Lanier recognized, or have the recreational use of Lake Lanier recognized as an economic purpose. It has not been recognized as an economic purpose in the past, and as a legislature for this district, I intend to lobby hard for that and have hopefully some influence on that committee so that it will benefit this area.
We have one more question, and we're going to open it up to the audience. In 1986, the Hall County Grand Jury investigated pollution problems on Lake Lanier. In their presentments, they cited a lack of enforcement of local, state, and federal environmental laws. Since that time, the Grand Jury Watchdog Committee, which was set up by that original grand jury, has continually been frustrated by this lack of enforcement. What would you do as an elected state official to help alleviate this problem? And this question starts with Picnic.
As far as keeping the lake clean, it's basically a state and it's a federal responsibility. The state, it falls to the EPA. I don't find that the EPA is really doing a very good job. I'm not real pleased with what they're doing, and I think certainly they can do a whole lot more to make this lake cleaner, not just Lake Lanier, but all the lakes and rivers in the state of Georgia. I believe one of the things that we need to do specifically as far as Lake Lanier is concerned is we need law enforcement. We need actual police officers who understand pollution on Lake Lanier. And I'll give you an example. We have I won't name names, but we had a company that was directly pumping their wastewater directly into Lake Lanier. This has been recently. The people went out to inspect it, but when they inspected it, they did it against the laws of the land, so to speak. In other words, they seized evidence that was improperly seized. So they had the goods on the people, but they could not bring it to court because their evidence was obtained improperly. If we're going to have law enforcement on Lake Lanier and looking for hot spots as far as pollution is concerned, then we need people that not only know about pollution and how to recognize it, but also how to make the case, so to speak, to where it does get into the court. But I do feel that enforcement on Lake Lanier is extremely important.
Okay.
I agree with a good majority of that, and alls I will add to it is that sometimes these issues that we say are complex because we insist on them being complex. We approach them that way instead of taking a direct line. Sometimes things are not so complex at all. If you see something that's got to be done, you move on it, and whatever tactics you got to use, you use them. It's quite simple. They must be enforced. The laws are in place. They must be enforced. Whatever we have to do to make sure that people follow those laws that are designed to keep this lake clean for all of us, they must be enforced. It's that simple.
Well, I basically would reiterate that the resources that are available for the prosecution of environmental cases, both on a civil level and a criminal level, are very scarce. And that being the situation, you're going to have people who are dumping and polluting the lake and who are getting away with it because they don't have the resources to adequately prosecute those people. There was a case, I understand, where a fine that was supposed to be a $10,000 fine was reduced to $1,500. This sounds like some type of negotiation that you hear about often in the legal system. But a lot of times that's as a result of the scarcity of resources and the unavailability of people to prosecute those cases. I think we need to beef up our law enforcement and also the divisions of the government that are responsible for enforcing the civil penalties as well.
I think education is the key to Lake Lanier. Teaching our children to, the environmental issues today, litter, cans. I know growing up on the lake, one of the biggest concerns I always had, or one concern, I was always picking up somebody else's litter. We see litter on the highways all the time, and people just take the attitude that they don't care. They don't care. I feel like, again, through publicity, through this group and other groups, through scouting, Girl Scouting, Boy Scouting, that's the way you teach children at a young age to take care of the ecology needs that we have, not only here, but all over the United States. So, yes, we can draw more laws. I think there are laws on the books now, but they're not enforceable enough to take care of the problems we have. One of the major problems we have is probably the septic tanks problems on the lake. And I know I've heard Dr. Lewis Rogers, I've heard Dr. Mayhew talk about septic systems on the lake. One of the ways to address that issue is through countywide sewage. And I think that's the answer to a lot of the problems we have on the lake.
Okay, thanks. We're going to open it now to questions from the audience. You can either ask questions from the floor, or if you prefer to write them and pass them forward, I can answer. If anybody would like a card to write your questions on, we can pass those out. You can just raise your hand. We'll pass those around.
I'll have a question.
Oh, okay, great.
Hall County has an illiteracy rate of close to 30%, adult illiteracy, which is unbelievable. I'd like to know what each of you feels about that, what you've done about it, and what you would do if you're elected.
This one starts with Mr. Taylor. If you have a question directed to a particular candidate, you can ask it to that candidate too, okay?
This is something that we're all going to have to take responsibility for. One of my theories of what must be done in government One thing that's true is all the technological advances we've had in the 50 years, whether in art, music, technology, one thing that has lagged behind consistently and dropped the ball is government. It's time for government to step forward and become innovative again. And one of the ways we're going to do it is to start electing quality individuals to prominent positions in government who can be living, breathing embodiments of this philosophy. We can set the tone for the nation. We can re-earn respect for the halls of government, not with halos, but with action, by acting on our beliefs. And by setting the tone, we can help create a renaissance of self-reliance and self-command in this country. And that means it will go out to every parent, every father, every mother must take responsibility for your children. We got to stop blaming mediocre school systems or mediocre teachers for our problems. That's just another way of passing off the blame on somebody else. Nothing will hold you back if you are driven. If you instill your children at an early age with the idea that they can do anything they want to do if they try hard enough, and we force our schools to focus back on academics, which is the tools you need, because when you can read and reason with numbers, when you are ready to go, you will go. This is something that all of us are going to have to do. And the idea that Washington can actually, and even the state level, can take a leading role in this is going to have to come on the individual level. I think this is what's called for more than anything. You're going to have to start taking charge of your life and your family's lives once again. And teachers are going to have to make learning fun. You have to spark curiosity and make them want to read.
Well, Stan, I believe that this problem probably encompasses the educational system as a whole in Georgia. I think Georgia sort of gets a bad rap in the educational area because of the fact that there are very smart students in Georgia, but there are a lot of pockets of poor people who bring the national statistics down. So I believe that's one of the explanations for why Georgia ranks so poorly on a national level in the educational area. As far as the local literacy rate is concerned, I'm wondering if possibly the Hispanic population influx would have any impact on that. You're shaking your head no. That being the case, I think the only thing you can do is make available programs for people who are willing to come forward and admit that they are illiterate and give them the support and try to do it in a way that's not embarrassing to them, and so that they will feel comfortable coming forward and admitting that they do have a problem, and just make sure the resources are available for them. Also, you've got to get this information to them through some type of campaign that it is available.
Personally, I think the problem still goes back to the home, the home environment where, male and female have children. It's the value of the home can address the problem through education. But to address the problem we have now, I think there are programs available out there to help the people that want to help themselves. Of course, that's the key element. They've got to want to help themselves. And being involved with the homeless, I've seen the needs of, illiterate problems with people that have this problem. And, but as far as a legislator, I will be, and I'll always be involved with the local concerns that we have here. And that is a major concern, is people that don't have the education and skills they need to take care of themselves.
This is what I talked about at the beginning, Stan, and you weren't here at the time, but one of the focuses that I have in the campaign is to get our government to focus on people and less on water slides and golf courses. We have run off and left people in this state. Because we have a high poverty rate in this state, to turn around and say, well, that's the reason they can't read, that's inexcusable. I have dealt with this for years, particularly in the area of law enforcement. When you find people in jail, you're going to find that a vast majority of those people that are in jail do not have a high school education. We began, and I think you remember some of that, we had Mr. Gailey over and we got grants, and we put into the jail a system whereby at least they could get a GED program. We've had numerous people come out of the jail through that GED program. I sometimes wondered if we were just, if we were doing something good for the people to benefit them or if we were just making a smarter criminal. But I do think that overall, we have benefited those individuals as it's given them greater ability to go out and find a job. Because when they go out to try to find a job, oftentimes they would feel that having been in jail, that was a heavy strike against them. Not having a high school education is another strike against them. This is an area of people forgotten by this state. And this is exactly what I'm talking about. We can't leave people behind in the wake of progress and expect to remain a great civilization. We can't do it. We're going to have to get to these people more and more. But the other thing that I found that was very interesting, and that is that a lot of people in the jail could not read even on a third grade level. Where did they get the desire to do that? We have to show them. We have to help them. We have to work with them. But if we're ever going to do anything with our society, we're going to have to help them. They're not going to get it on their own.
Before I ask for any more questions, I'd like to see anybody raise their hand who needs to write one down. If you need to, a piece of paper to write one down, we'll give you that. Also, I'd like to, since it is an environmental and taxpayers forum, we'd like to try to restrict your questions to those subjects, if you will. We don't want to get too far afield. And again, I would encourage any other groups who have specific interest to please have whole forums on your issues so that you can learn more about how your candidates feel on these issues. I think these things are very productive. They give the candidates a lot of exposure. You give candidates and the voters a lot of exposure to each other. And I think that if anybody wants to know how to put one together, it's real simple. I'd be glad to help you with it, no problem. Okay, Russ?
I'd like to ask a three-part question. I'd like for each candidate to tell us what he or she feels is the three most serious environmental problems that are faced in Hall County. And for each one of those three, tell us, is it or is it not caused directly by population growth or made worse by population growth? And then tell us whether you are or are not in favor of the continued use of tax money to generate additional growth over and above natural increase.
This one starts with Chandelle.
Could you,
We might need to, well, it's kind of long.
Top three environmental issues, what are they for Hall County? For each one of them, has it been caused or made worse by population growth? And are you for or against continued use of tax money to promote more and more growth?
well, I would say that facing Hall County, probably the most serious environmental problems are non-source pollution, pollution that runs into the lake, pollution when it rains, the oil and the gas that flows into the lake that pollutes the lake. I think toxic dumping into the lake is a problem. And I feel that overpopulation is in and of itself an environmental problem. We don't necessarily have the resources to feed and make available water and have the land to provide for the number of people who are living on the planet. And I feel like that is the number one most serious problem facing the world, not only Hall County. Now, as to whether or not population growth should be encouraged in Hall County, as long as that growth can be sustained by the infrastructure and we have a capacity to carry that growth, I'm all for it. But we have to be able to plan and not have something happen that happened in Gwinnett, and that is rampant growth without the infrastructure to carry that growth. I think that if we can encourage industries to come into Hall County that are clean industries, computer industries, for example, would be very clean industries. Intellectual type industries would be better suited than ones that are known for their toxic dumping and emissions, like the printing facility. I don't think it's a good idea to encourage those type of industries to come into Hall County. And I certainly wouldn't be in favor of using tax dollars to to promote that type of growth.
Would you be in favor of using tax dollars to promote some types of growth?
Yes, I think you have to have growth. Industries which are not harmful to the environment. And that's what I was talking about with, there's a term for it, I can't think of it right now, but it's the type of industries that don't necessarily pollute. I know in Austin, Texas, where I went to college, there's a computer industry that's been growing rapidly, and that's a very clean industry. They don't do a lot of polluting, and I think that's the kind of thing that should be encouraged.
Okay. Well, I think there's a follow-up question that someone had to leave that left me with it that falls in line with that last part. Do you remember the three, Carl? You got three?
Repeat them again.
All right. Three major pollution problems in the area. Do you think population has what impact, or do you think population has an impact on these problems, and do you support tax dollars for growth?
Okay. As far as the environmental problems, and of course, there again, I'm a business person. I'm not a scientist, and I'm not a chemist of any type. But day-to-day problems that I see and read about, of course, is the city is addressing, and I'm sure the county will too, is the rainwater runoff. It's become a problem as far as runoff water going into the Lake Lanier, and I think those needs are being, and we've got to address that problem. And the third thing I think is the problem as far as environmental is traffic. It amazes me every day where our traffic is coming from. And of course, every automobile that comes through is a polluter, and every automobile that comes through, there's a litter coming out the window. And those are the three main issues that I see. As far as growth, I think we can control growth. We've got more planners right now working for the city, working for the county. And I think overall they do a pretty good job. I think they can over-control growth. And I think that's a problem we have, is that we have people that want to come to Gainesville Hall County. You know, that's a problem, but it's a problem, it's a good problem to have, and I think we've got the professionals to take care of that need. Of course, I'm a business person. I'm for growth, but I am for controlled growth, and it's something that can be controlled.
As far as the three environmental problems that I see, one is erosion. The lake is eroding. I notice my backyard gets smaller and smaller each year by a little bit, and I don't know that we can really control that much. But that is a problem that we have in the lake. And of course with that is siltation. And a lot of that siltation is coming from the non-source, the pollution that we're having as a result of rain. You'll find a lot of times that the lake reaches a high fecal count, and it generally happens right after a rainfall, where it comes off the fields, off the streets, and off the various parts of the community. A third thing that I'm finding a problem with, and it's not so much, I guess it is a pollution problem, and that is our aquifer. The aquifer that we have as far as the lake, or as far as our water and our ground level is concerned, is getting lower, and it's causing a greater drain back off the lake. Impact of population. The impact of population has a very strong and positive, or very negative impact as far as water is concerned. We only have so much water. Again, going back to the aquifer, the water in the ground is getting lower. We have not been able to recover since the drought of 1987. And the primary reason for that is that our land makeup in North Georgia is very rocky and red clay. It does not hold water. So the wells of new houses that are put in just keep dropping that aquifer even more, which is going to put a greater demand back on the lake even more. As far as tax money for businesses, are you talking specifically like a tax-free bonds and those kinds of things?
I'm talking about tax money used to build industrial parks and tax-free roads.
I think that should be privatized. I don't feel that we should be spending government money to do something that a private business can do.
As far as the main pollution problems, I see, the only one that really I see is the lake and the quality of the water. Now, is that related to the growth? Of course it is. But when a community grows, it experiences growing pains, just like you did when you went through adolescence. To grow to something higher and bigger, you're going to have some growing pains. And as far as the traffic, I don't think that's anything specific to us. Everywhere I've gone in North Georgia is experiencing the same thing. The roads are all outdated. They were not built or designed for the traffic flow that we have now. They're much like little veins, and we have a bigger heart now, and the blood can't pump through it, so it gets backed up everywhere. So as far as tax money, I don't believe in using that to encourage businesses to come to our area. I think if we are a free and prosperous community that takes care of its own, that will be the only inspiration and the only encouragement you need. It's worked so far. I don't think we need to be using our tax money to be doing that. I think we can speak for ourselves, and our success will shine on its own.
Also, I'd like to encourage the media to participate if they have any questions to ask. So, do we have any more questions?
I want to ask a question concerning the lottery. It's my understanding about $24 million a year was produced from Hall County concerning the lottery. It's been mentioned by the news media and in discussions that I've got involved in, sending part of the lottery money from the state back to the county government. I'd like to see 50% sent back. That would be $12 million a year. That would cut our taxpayers' property tax 33%. I don't think there's too many taxpayers that would grumble about a 33% tax cut. I've talked to several candidates for governor. They like the idea. And if we elect a governor, which I hope we do, that would send this to the legislature in the form of legislation to let us vote on it, would you vote yes or no on it? I guess, is it all right?
Mr. Rogers is the next one.
Or whichever one.
Well, we'll stay in order.
Terry, that's a loaded question. The lottery had passed the House and the Senate and became law because it was going 100% to education. I would rather it stay for education. I'd be glad to look at it to see the probability, but overall, I've always supported for education, and I think that's the reason it passed, in the state of Georgia, because it was directed to education. But it's certainly something to look into. Whether you could get it changed or not, I do not know. But my personal preference is to stay for education only.
Steve, I think you've got a good idea. The problem that we have right now, as you well know, we know basically how much money's coming in. We do not know how much money is actually being spent on education. The way the system is set up right now, the money goes basically into the general fund, and that's where it's supposed to go by law. But we do not know where it goes from there. There's no actual accounting or audit to say that this amount of money came in for the lottery and this is how much was actually spent, or we're holding this amount of money to be spent. I feel that if a county generates that kind of income, then they need to have back into their county basically what they generated. We have found that also on fine forfeiture money as far as training of law enforcement officers and various other types of criminal justice activities, that the money is generated, but we see very, very little of it coming back into the county. And my question is where is it? But it's a good point.
Would you support it?
I would support it, yes.
Of sending it back to the county?
I would
like
for the
property
county.
tax relief?
I would. Well, I don't know if you could do that. I don't think you can do that. That money is designed specifically for the schools, so you can't just say, well, this is what we're going to use it for. If it comes back, I want it to go to the schools. That's what it was for, and that's what I want it used for. I don't want to use it for anything else.
It could be voted on, though, people could vote on it again to use it for property tax.
No, the vote it's already been done. Now, if you had some change to where periodically you change legislation, then, but I don't think you're going to.
What we had was just a few bureaucrats up there, and they said this is the way that we want the money to go. And, we're running the thing, it's gonna be our way. And I think the voters wanted the lottery. I'm not so sure that they don't want property tax relief. A lot of people in this county is hurting.
Well-
And I'm asking you people for help.
Well, that's exactly the reason I'm running, is to go up and make sure that that lottery money and some other monies that I see wandering around up there goes to what it's supposed to go for. And I question whether it is. But as far as coming back to the state, or coming back to this county in the same proportion in which it went out, I think it's a good idea and I support it.
I have a question for you. Have you ever thought of running yourself?
I don't know, I haven't decided yet.
By the way, all this talk about water has made me so thirsty that we've gone right through the bottom. But this is clean water here. No, the lottery was voted in for schools, and I think that's where everyone wants it to stay, and that's where I want it to stay. I don't want to start messing with the lottery. That's what it was voted in for, and that's where it should stay. Now, if you want to have a tax break or start reducing taxes, that's a very weak and mediocre and almost, kind of cowardly way of approaching it. If you really want to do something in terms of reducing taxes, you have to declare war on the entire scene, which is government in general is gone beyond the bounds set by the Constitution. It must be reduced. Taxes must be reduced. We must abolish tax codes as they stand. This is just too half-hearted, and I don't think it's really worth the time and effort.
Well, I believe that the general education fund is set aside for education, and lottery funds are to supplant, or not to supplant, but to supplement the funds that are already spent on education. So I think now that we have this huge amount of money from the lottery, that they're almost stretching to find ways to spend it. That being the situation, I would be willing to consider some type of alternative if it became a situation where the lottery funds were not necessarily going for programs that were very substantive. It was just, we've got to spend all this money on education. I think that then some of the money could go back to the local governments, but I do believe it should be spent for education, unless, of course, it was a situation where we just didn't need it for education, and then I think that would require some type of referendum. I think that in order to give the taxpayers property tax relief, we need to fund school systems through sales taxes, and that will take some of the burden off the property tax owners.
Do we have any more questions from the audience or the media about environment, taxes, anything like that? I did have one left with me from one of the people who came and had to leave early. It says, do you recognize that there are limits to growth? If so, do you have thoughts on how we can move toward a sustainable, viable economy that is not dependent on continual physical growth? And this one starts with Dick.
A sustainable, viable growth.
Economy that is not dependent on continual physical growth.
That might be kind of hard to do. I think the main thing, let's go back to what we were talking about to begin with, and that is we need some ordinances or laws or something passed in Hall County by our commissioners. I know Forsyth County has, and they only allow in a certain type of industry, one that basically is not going to pollute. It is going to pollute to some extent. Nothing is going to be added and not pollute. But I'm talking about a real pollution type situation that is going to affect the air, that is going to affect the water. We can, I think, have the type of sustainable growth that's positive, but we're going to have to be able to have the control growth so we're not having spots. Yeah, I see spots throughout the county where you'd have different types of building, different types of structures. We can't continue that and have controlled growth in Hall County. But yes, I believe that we can, but we're going to have the organization to do it.
I believe we can too, and by approaching it in a positive manner, but I'd like to add a little separate light on this. It seems to be almost a disease deep in the human race that we want to control everything. Life is like a curve. It's not straight, but we impose straight lines next to everything, and it's got to fit that or it's wrong, not the way we approach it. I think basically life itself is, the more you try to control these things, it's like the tides in the ocean. You think it's wrong, you don't like the way the tide's coming in, so you erect barriers and you try to construct everything according to your will, and when the tide tries to come back in, you haven't helped it, you've hurt it. I think trying to control growth too much is the wrong way to go, and because there's a certain line there, and if you cross it, you get into something that is no different than communism or fascism or anything we've had. Yes, we can maintain a sustainable growth, but we can take that too far. And I don't really think that we live such a miserable life here. If you see the way things go around in countries like Russia and places where they're really hurting, things here are really quite fine. I don't think we really have all that much to worry about here. We need to be positive about the future and only step down where people are crossing the line, where they're polluting our community, where they're breaking laws. We stop them from doing that.
Well, I think when you talk about having a sustainable economy with no physical growth, that's almost an isolationist type mentality, that you're not going to let anyone else in and that the community is not going to grow. I think that if you were to do that, then everyone within the community would have to buy locally and not buy regional or national products so that any of the funds were going out of the community. And under those circumstances, it might be able to work. But I don't really think that it's going to happen that way. There's going to be growth. The population is going to continue to increase. So it's just a matter of designing the systems to support the population that is inevitable. And Hall County has had a recent influx of a great number of Hispanic persons, and there's been quite a lot of concern about the drain on the resources that we all have, and the fact that a lot of these people are here illegally and they're not paying taxes, but yet they're using the resources we have, the educational system, the hospitals, and some of the other institutions that we have, and they're not necessarily giving back to the community. And I would just assert that in that situation we need to increase the tax base so that they are contributing to the community and not necessarily draining the community of its resources as they are in states like Florida and California and Texas whose resources are being severely deteriorated as a result of a large number of illegal immigrants.
I know where that question came from. It came from Tom Southern, probably.
No, it did.
It did not. Okay.
You want to hear his?
Yeah, we haven't finished with this one yet.
Right, I knew Tom had a speaker down at Gainesville College in continuing ed that had a speaker come from another state.
That was Gainesville College.
Yeah.
It wasn't, no, it was Gainesville College.
It was Gainesville College. What was that guy's name, Dr.
His
Miller?
name,
Kinsley.
Michael Kinsley.
I wasn't able to
He's
go.
for planned growth.
Oh, he was for Plan Grove?
Yeah.
He wasn't necessarily for stopping growth. No.
Okay.
A lot of people misinterpreted that completely.
Well, that's what Tom had told me was what the seminar was about. But anyway, you know, that is a tough situation to handle. I think there again we can control what we want to control, and I think at times, you know, on the different associations, different groups, we need to decide if we want to stay where we are totally or move on. I think again, you know, being a native of this area, I was glad to see growth, but there again, once you start growing, it's certainly hard to stop growth unless you put in every rule and regulation and zoning rule and regulation to stop it. Personally, being a small businessman, we need certain growth, but we can pick and choose how we want to grow. And I think our planning department has done that with this new comprehensive plan. So, but to answer your question, no, I don't see how you can thrive without some growth.
If not, is there anyone else who has questions? Okay, go ahead. And if anybody has any follow-up questions, we'll get back to them.
Okay. It seems as though the only people who are going to be able to solve the dilemma over whether we can vote for a package or a line item in the special purpose sales tax election is going to be the legislature.
Loud, please.
Okay. The the legislature is going to have to vote on whether to clarify in some way whether counties can actually offer a line item special purpose sales tax ballot, or whether it will have to be a package. A judge in Clark County sort of throughout the case and refused to address it, and it's been done in Elbert County, but people here are afraid that it could be legally challenged and hold back on the wholesale tax program. So, as a state legislature, would you be willing, number one, to bring up the question of offering a line item, and if it came before you, would you vote yes or no on whether voters could have a line item sales tax ballot?
Okay, this one starts with.
Without any hesitation, yes, because it follows the principles of the country. I believe greater freedom in the economic and personal realm is the answer to everything, except, of course, for the criminal. I think a line item veto would not only be a great idea for the presidency, I think it's a great idea on a state level. I think the people here who are putting their money into it should have control over where it goes. And I would support that without any hesitation whatsoever.
The problem I have with the line item veto is that in a situation where you have a majority, for example, a majority white district or a majority black district, and their interests are somewhat divided, it seems to me that if you have a line item veto, whoever is in the majority in that community may be able to bring projects into their part of the community, and to the prejudice of the other side of the district, for example. And that's the problem I have with the line item veto. It seems to rest on majority rules rather than fairness for the entire community.
Well, I personally favor the line item. There again, the crux of making it work, whether you lump all roads, whether they be in the city, whether they be in the county, need to be included as roads if it's schools or whatever it is. I would, to make it fair for all the citizens of Hall County. The problem you have is coming up with a fair way to treat all the citizens of Gainesville Hall County. But I think with the right wording, it can be fair for everyone. But I think it is important that each and every voter can vote on a grouping, whether it's roads for Hall County, whether it's schools for Hall County, whether it's a ball field for Hall County, whether it's water and sewage for Gainesville Hall County. But to answer the question, yes, I would be in favor of it.
I am in favor of the line item vote. Of course, I got caught up in that a few years ago. We were trying to build a jail, and next thing I know, there was several other items that were on the lump sum, and I caught a world of hurt and complaint from people because I was working for a golf course when in fact I was working for a jail, but it was part of the package and I didn't have any other way to go. But the people of the community understood that we needed a jail and we were under a court order to have a jail and get a jail in. But it was very difficult, but I did feel that it was very unfair to the voting public. I think as far as different parts of the community and their desires and needs, I don't feel that our community is closed-minded. I do feel that they're open to government and they want to have a chance, though, to voice their opinion on the individual parts of that vote, and I think it's only fair that they do so. From whatever part of the community it comes from, I think that our community is fair enough and open-minded enough that they would accept the line item.
Could I ask one more question? I think it's very important.
Okay, if you don't mind, let me see if there's anybody else who hasn't asked a question yet, and then we can go back to people who have already visited.
Yes, my question just for Chandelle Summer. Ms. Summer, do you feel that the citizens of Hall County are responsible enough to vote on a line item veto in Hall County on any subject?
Well, I think that the citizens of Hall County are very responsible people. I'm one of them, and I consider myself responsible. But as far as the line item veto is concerned, I feel like when you have a choice of different projects the natural tendency is to vote for projects which are going to personally benefit you. And there's also a tendency to vote for very popular projects rather than projects which might be necessary for the sustainability of the community.
But isn't that what the legislatures do in Georgia? Aren't they the ones that vote for the golf courses, and Tom Murphy votes for, lobbies for things he needs? Isn't that what happens in Atlanta? By bringing it back to the citizens, wouldn't that resolve that? Wouldn't that be at least the better of the two evils?
Well, there's a lot of problems with the legislature. That's the reason I'm running, so that I can help change the legislature. And certainly there are pet projects. There's all sorts of special interests that control the legislature. And you're right, there are a lot of terrible things that are going on that are not responsible, and they're not helping the taxpayers at all. And that's one of the reasons I'd like to go down there, so that I can vote as a responsible citizen for things that need to be done for the government, rather than because I like to play golf on Saturdays.
Tomorrow, several state laws will be going into effect, as will beginning of next year. Many of these involve requirements that place a great deal of stress on local government to come up to the standards put by both the federal government and the state government. This is what many people refer to as unfunded mandates. New regulations they have to follow, but the state never gives them the funding to do that. How would y'all try and control that when you got it there?
This one starts with Chandelle, please.
I think unfunded mandates are a good idea. I think they're used in a lot of environmental regulation situations, and I would support those. The unfunded mandates basically require the county or the city to do something without receiving federal funds in order to implement the particular project. And they use unfunded mandates to restrict the discharge of toxins, discharge of pollutants into the air. And I believe that they're a good idea. Tom Murphy supported them, for example, in the last session, and I agree with him. I think they're necessary for the state, and we can't be passing out money to every city and county every time something needs to be done.
Mr. Rogers?
Well, unfunded mandates are very unfair in my opinion. It's the old theory from the feds, from the state, passing the buck. Passing the buck to the taxpayers, it's just, I'm not for it. If I am elected, when I am elected, I will do everything within my power to eliminate unfunded mandates.
This goes back to a question Steve had earlier, and that is as far as the taxes that he has. Unfunded mandates are basically a debt that the state passes down to the county because the state has decided that they're not going to do something. When you sit down and take a look at the unfunded mandates that are now in Hall County, it has nothing to do with environment. It's just that the state is not doing what they're supposed to be doing. And I got a list of them. The Hall County, just Hall County, pays 25% of their total revenue to unfunded mandates. They pay over $10 million a year to unfunded mandates. Now, a lot of the things that we're paying for in these taxes that are just given to us by the state, we're already paying for in our state taxes. My question is, why isn't the state doing what they're supposed to be doing? Why aren't they doing the job that they're supposed to be doing? Because they can get away with it and pass it off to the county. And it's not fair. I'm going to do everything I can when I'm elected to get that stopped. Because it's just not fair to the county taxpayer. I think the county taxpayer should be spending the money that we have here in the county. $10 million a year. There's a lot of things that we can do in Hall County for $10 million a year.
Well, funding and mandates, I'm sick of all of them. They sum up best what is worst about government. You say funding, well, that's a big word. It's basically confiscation of your hard-earned money through taxes used any way they want. Mandate is force. Do you realize that government produces nothing? The only product of government is the use of force. And when you come to the private sector, our power is with dollar bills. That's true democracy. We take our dollar bills where we want to. Government produces nothing but force. And the idea of an unfunded mandate is a great contradiction that only this beast called government could ever come up with. I think it's a ridiculous idea, and it must be laughed off the stage or fought off one way or the other.
Thank you. I understand Mr. Rogers has an 8 o'clock appointment. I don't think you're going to make it, but if you would like to go ahead and make your 2 3-minute closing statement, we'll give you an opportunity, or if you have to go ahead and leave, I didn't realize you had an appointment. Whichever you choose.
Well, let me say thanks for hosting this. I think it's been a great opportunity to talk about the issues which we're all concerned about, environmental, taxes, whatever they may be. I am running because I want to run. I feel like government today is a problem. It's not taking care of the needs that we need locally as far as the city and the county. Being a small businessman makes me more qualified to handle the needs for the voters of Gainesville Hall County. Raising 2 children, educating 2 children, putting them through college, being 46.5 years of age, dealing with some 2,000 customers that I have to deal with and have over the last 20 years. I have seen and heard lots of problems, lots of issues, and I feel like being a newcomer, I know the needs of the small business person today. On July the 19th, I would like to ask for each and everyone's vote, and also on November the 8th. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're going to now, I have a man who's been patient back in the back and needs to ask a question.
That's okay.
Well, I was going to say, we could, if you would like, we could move, since we have lost one of our candidates, we can just move into a free-form discussion. If you would like to do that for a brief period, and then we can hear the closing statements. Okay.
Well, this is just another idea. We could all make our closing statements, and then for anyone who wants to talk one-on-one, we could do that.
Sure, we could do that. That little lady comes in here late 45 and she's chasing us out.
You know, a lot of people are beginning to leave because
Yeah,
it's getting
right.
late, and I don't want it to dwindle.
Okay, why don't we do that then? We'll move, if that's all right. Does anyone else have a question they would like to ask? Okay. One more question.
I've heard most of the candidates support a planned or controlled growth, and rightly have commended the Hall County planning process here and talked about the comprehensive plan. But it seems to me that no matter what our attempts are as a county, that we do have this government within a government existing in Georgia that is a separate economic development engine that we don't have anything to do with, and that is the Department of Transportation. No matter what our comprehensive plan says, there is a plan someplace in the bowels of the Department of Transportation that says something different. And 90% of the time, their transportation plan supersedes whatever we want for this county. And we don't have anything to say about that. We don't have any control over those dollars. Those dollars goes from our gas taxes directly into that fund. How can we get a hold of that money and use that for sewers and infrastructure and things that we need instead of just building more roads to nowhere that fuel more development and more people?
That's a great question, and it's Dick's turn.
Thanks a lot. You're right, that gas tax money does go in there, and they made a terrible mistake when they did that, because they gave the director of the DOT a tremendous amount of power. Millions amount of money that go in there, and whoever the director is, he can really lord it over the county commissioners as to whether or not he's going to do whatever in their county, because he has millions of dollars and none of it has to be approved by legislation or anybody to spend. And he's the only budget in the entire Georgia system that's that way. How do you stop it? Good question. There's been a lot of people try. There's been a lot of people go in there and go after that money. But the surprising thing is that it is protected by some of the legislative group that is currently down there, what I call the status quo group that's down there. But I'm telling you, there's a new day coming. There's a new day coming when we're going to do something to get that back. And I'll tell you why. When I first started going down to the legislature to try and get legislation passed, there were 15 Republicans. 15 Republicans in the House. Today there's 53 out of 180. Now that doesn't seem like much, but what's it take to get something passed? 91. They're expecting this time around for a whole lot more Republicans to get elected. We're expecting at least to have a number of 70 in the House this time, which gets us a whole lot closer to the majority. So we're going to be at least within 20, inside of 20. There's a group of Democrats down there that don't get along with Tom Murphy, and they're already forming coalitions. Now let me tell you, when you go down there, the best way to get things passed is to write good law and then work on it and work for it. Build your coalitions, go into the committees, and you can get it passed in, around, or through Tom Murphy. I don't worry about Tom Murphy because I've gotten bills passed around him before. But it's how you build coalitions, and that's how we're going to go after that particular amount of money. I don't think it's right that he has it. I don't think it's right that he lords that kind of power over our counties because of it.
I tend to see things on a very big, broad, grand scale. The purpose of government and its greatest activities is theft and force. That is why the Constitution is built upon a limited government, because the larger the government gets, it doesn't matter what part of the world you live in, the results will be the same. If you go after and try to fight this big thing by little pricks here and there, it's only going to replace itself. You're never going to bring it back. The fact is the Department of Transportation is just another example of a tentacle of this huge octopus that must be lopped off. You lop it off, it's going to grow back. You've got to fight it in a bigger way. We've got to reduce government intervention and control from our lives across the spectrum. Personally and economically, it must be completely reduced. And remember when Nixon died and they said, well, everything is closed except for what is most essential. I was like, well, leave them closed, because the original idea is what is most essential. We don't need all that other stuff. And instead of attacking the Department of Transportation, let's get all of the money that we earn back, because the idea of this country is to reap the fruits of your labors. When we have all the money in our control, we can better decide what to do with it, because I think we can control the economy as individuals much better than any government organization will ever be able to do. This is just one of the many battles that must be fought.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that the motor fuel tax is specifically designed to pay for roads and bridges and things like that, and by law cannot be used for any other type of project. I would support legislation that would allow a portion of those funds to be used for other projects, specifically mass transit, because I think that's the wave of the future. We can't continue to have billions and billions of automobiles every day on the expressways, on the roads, polluting the environment. The emissions from those automobiles and the gasoline, the resources that they're using are going to eventually be gone. So we need to look into the future and decide where we're going. And I think mass transit is the way that we're going to have to look to.
I think that's a great question to end on. And again, if any of you have any questions for the individual candidates, please stick around and talk to them. But we're going to move now to our closing statements, 2 to 3 minutes. We're going to start with Mr. Taylor.
I've got a saying on the brochure I've been passing out that I think sums it up best. The leaders of the future must defend capitalism without apology and spearhead a renaissance of self-reliance and self-command and respect for life and liberty. Now, the problem is freedom does not belong to those who cannot govern themselves. It does not work. Freedom belongs only to those who can govern themselves. And when a nation and a community begins to lose its ability to govern itself, it's only food for inspiration for those who are always waiting in the wings, who want to come in and control everything. It's happened with Greece, it happened with Rome, and in the 30s with Germany and Italy. History will back me up on this. Now, the problem is government exists to increase its own power and to perpetuate itself. It's got to create the illusion out there that we need it in all areas of life. And this is creating an environment of weakness and dependence. I take this to the laws of nature. What is weak in nature? The tree that gets knocked over in the storm and cannot support itself will perish. The animal that strays from the pack and cannot support itself will perish, and the nation that cannot rely on its own resources will perish. Strength in nature is everything that is disciplined, self-reliant, and can take care of itself. And these laws of nature apply to us and our form of government as well as to everything else. Now, how are we going to attack the kind of environment that we live in now? First, we've got to hold up what I call the golden goal, the tablet of the highest good, which is basically personal freedom, economic freedom based on personal responsibility. This has got to be ingrained into our youth. And of all races, all genders, it doesn't matter. An American is an American. These are the qualities that make this nation great. Now, to help that happen, we've got to start electing people who can get into office and be living embodiments of this philosophy and fight for it wherever they can, and use the power of visibility that comes with holding public office to lead this charge. And we can help re-earn respect for the halls of government, what little there will be, not with halos over our heads, because no one has those, but with action. We've got to reduce the deficit. We've got to reduce government. We've got to abolish the current tax codes. We need to force the mother of necessity upon the private sector, which is always waiting to provide with better results the laws of supply and demand. We need to cast all the leeches back into the wilderness of self-survival for their own good. And we need to tell people that, look, when you command yourself and support yourself and your family, and you can think for yourself as an individual, you have just helped to save the nation. And that concludes my closing statement.
I have three very good reasons why I'm running for the legislature. Their names are Joey, Jack, and Jake. They're my three children who I care very much about, and I care very much about the future that they're going to have in this world. I want to make sure that the streets are safe. I want to make sure that the environment is clean, and I want to make sure that they have equal opportunity. I've been practicing law in Gainesville for 10 years. I've practiced in the domestic relations field, and I've practiced in the criminal field. And I'm pretty much aware of how the criminal justice system works. It's a problem right now. We have a lot of crime. But the way that we fix that is by getting people who know the system very well and can shore up the holes. I've practiced law for 10 years, and I understand what the problems are, and I think I understand what the solutions are. My opponent has mentioned several times tonight that he's a small businessman. Well, I'm a small business person myself. I started my own law practice 10 years ago, and I didn't have any money to do it with. I don't come from a wealthy family. All I had was the experience and the legal background and the training that I brought into the job. And I had to fight very hard. I was a woman competing in a man's world where I was pretty much outnumbered, and they don't take any prisoners in the private practice of law. So I learned to fight real hard. And if you get up every morning and you fight over a series of years, you become a very tough person. And I think I can take that experience and that toughness that I've learned through the private practice of law down to the legislature and help to make the reforms and help to change the system as we know it today, so that we do have a wonderful future for all of the children in Georgia.
I want to thank the Lake Lanier Association and the Hall County Taxpayers Association for having this forum and having us out. As I mentioned earlier, I have a vision, and that vision is to bring democracy to Georgia. We need to bring we the people back to the state. We have the lowest school system in the country, and the sad part about that is when you compare the United States system against the global system, we're not doing too well there. So we're almost the worst of the worst. Our well-being as far as our children in this state, we rank 47th in the nation. Our high school or school dropout rates are huge. Our poverty in this state is huge. We're spending money right and left. We're overspending our budgets. Right now, the state of Georgia is in debt $3.3 billion. Every man, woman, and child in this state owes the state of Georgia $500. We've got to stop it. I want small government. I want to privatize some of the government. I want to get the government off people's backs The unfunded mandates we've got to stop. We've got to get government off of people's backs and out of their pockets. We've got to return the government to the public, to the people. I love Lake Lanier. I live on it. I see it every morning. You get a bonding for it. I've dove in it. Of course, when I was in the sheriff's department, I was diving for things that people generally didn't want to find. That was dead bodies. But I know Lake Lanier. I have a great deal of respect for it. I want to do everything possible to save this lake and to keep it from dying as fast as it's dying. But I feel that I offer a lot as I come in and with a great deal of experience and knowledge as being the first Republican elected in Hall County. I learned to work with Democrats. I learned to get things done through Democrats. We brought about a department that the public of this county was wanting, and I did it through Democrats because there wasn't any Republicans around. You've got to know how to work the system. If you're wanting to get things done in a government, then you've got to know how to do it. I've got the experience, I've done it, and I've got the education to do it. I want to be your representative from the 20th District. I want to serve this area, and I feel that I would do an excellent job for you in representing you in Atlanta. I appreciate your vote on July 19th and also on November the 8th. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I want to make one quick announcement before we dismiss tonight. Any of you who are interested in Lake Lanier or want to participate in the lake monitoring that goes on annually through Dr. Ed Mayhew at Gainesville College, the classes will begin at Gainesville College on the 23rd. They'll be held at night on the 23rd, the 24th, the 25th, and then on the 27th, which is a Saturday, we go out on the lake and we learn how to use the equipment. And then whether you take the classes or not, if you want to participate in collecting samples and the testing, that will begin on the 29th of August and will run through the 2nd of September. And we want to encourage all of you who are interested in Lake Lanier, want to do this, to come out with us. It's one of the most rewarding things I do all year long. I know I enjoy it, and everybody who participates really learns a lot. But I also want to thank all of you for coming. We particularly want to thank the candidates. You were very patient during the little mean heat wave we had. And we thank you so much. Let's give them a hand.